Welcome back, everyone, to my channel. Today, I'll continue taking you through the romantic yet tumultuous love story between CEO James and the resilient young woman, LyTuDiep. After countless trials, separations and reunions, James and Diep have finally found their way back to each other. The peaceful days they now share seem like a well-earned reward for all they've endured. They live simply, cherishing every moment, as if trying to hold on tightly to the fragile happiness fate has just returned to them. But life is never that predictable. Trouble strikes again when a string of mysterious thefts begins to occur near the forested area where James's company factory is located. Though he had sent people to investigate, James, ever the responsible leader, decided to visit the scene himself. And that's when disaster struck. While following a trail in the dark, James was ambushed by the thieves. Unable to defend himself in time, he was struck from behind and tumbled down a deep mountainside into the freezing night. Whether he is alive or dead remains a terrifying unknown. No word, no sign, no trace of him since. Back home, Diep waits. She waits in agony, her heart gripped by fear and helplessness. The phone calls that go unanswered. The sleepless nights filled with silence and sorrowful sighs. Her teary eyes never leaving the quiet phone screen that refuses to light up. Where is James? Is he still alive? And is their love strong enough to endure this ultimate test of life and death? The answers await in the upcoming episodes. So stay with me to find out what happens to James, and what Diep will do to fight for the man she loves more than her own life. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss a single moment of this emotional and breathtaking love story. A whole night had passed. A night that felt like a century, dragging on second by second in uncertainty and tormenting silence. Diep sat alone in the small house, the dim yellow light casting shadows on her weary face after a sleepless night. The wind outside whispered through the cracks of the wooden door, swaying the curtain ever so slightly, creating the illusion that someone had just passed by. But no. There was no one. Only her mind playing tricks, because her heart was trembling with fear. The phone screen remained still. She had called, more than 30 times. Each time she pressed that button, a flicker of hope sparked in her chest. And each time, it shattered under the cold, mechanical voice. The number you are calling is currently unreachable. Beep, beep, beep. That sound echoed in her mind like a blade slicing through a heart already clenched in pain. No one answered. No message. No signal. No trace of James, the man she had always believed would come back. The man she believed would never leave her waiting in vain. Sliding the phone into her jacket pocket, Diep stepped outside. She had made up her mind. She would walk to James's house. The motorbike still stood silently under the porch, ready as always. But for some reason, she couldn't bring herself to climb on. Something inside whispered, "Walk today. Just walk, and feel every step toward him." And so she did, quietly, like a shadow, down the red dirt path still damp with early morning dew. The chilly morning wind slipped through her thin coat, whistling with a cutting chill across the quiet fields. The road to James's house wasn't far, but today, every step felt longer, heavier. Not because of distance, but because of the storm inside her heart. She passed familiar electric poles, bushes, and winding corners, everything unchanged, except for the tremble in her chest. She walked past the little market, where they used to hold hands every weekend. The stalls were still closed. The tarp still drawn. No voices. Only the echo of her own footsteps along the empty alley, sounding like a silent cry drifting into the air. "James, can you hear me?" Memories rushed in with the wind. Crossing the small bridge where he once waited for her in the rain, she paused for a moment. Her feet hesitated, then continued forward. She didn't look back. Her canvas shoes were soaked in dew. The hem of her coat was dirted with little splashes of mud. But Diep didn't care. Every step was a prayer. Every breath, a quiet longing. She had once promised James, if anything happened, she would never abandon him. And today, that promise was the only thing keeping her going, even as her heart felt weighed down with the burden of an entire stormy sky. Then finally, James's house came into view. The same rows of shaded trees. The same brick walls tangled with ivy. The same old green gate where she once stood waiting every afternoon. But today, it all felt different. No birdsong. No sweet scent of his mother's baked pastries. Just an eerie silence that blanketed everything. Diep stopped at the gate. She lifted her hand to knock, but let it fall. She stood there, frozen. Her chest rose and fell with unspoken questions. Was there a truth behind that gate she wasn't ready to face? Did no one inside know where James was? Or worse, did they know, and chose not to say? A sharp gust of wind rushed past her ear, making her flinch. She clenched her fist, drew a deep breath, and gently pushed the gate open. The rusty hinge creaked, a long, haunting sound that seemed to awaken the stillness of the courtyard. The gate to James's house creaked open, and Diep stepped into the yard, each step slow and cautious, as if afraid to disturb the suffocating silence. Her heart pounded wildly in her chest, a mix of anxiety, dread, and the faintest sliver of hope. Maybe, just maybe, James's mother would tell her he had come home. Maybe his phone had just run out of battery. But when the front door opened, it wasn't James who stood there. It was his mother, her usually warm face now shadowed with fatigue. There was a flicker of surprise in her eyes, quickly replaced by worry. "Diep? You're here early. Is something wrong?" she asked gently. Diep didn't beat around the bush. Her voice trembled slightly, but she tried to stay composed. "Auntie, I haven't been able to reach James since yesterday. I called all night, but the phone didn't even ring. I thought, maybe he came home, or maybe he called you?" At that, James's mother's eyes fell. She sighed and motioned for Diep to sit beside her on the familiar long sofa in the living room. "No. I tried calling too, but couldn't get through. Yesterday, he told me he was heading to the company's factory near the forest to check on something. He left in the afternoon, and then nothing. At first, I thought he might have just been busy or his phone died, but it's been too long, and still no word." That sentence cut through Diep's chest like a blade. Her hands clenched, nails digging deep into her palms. James had said he was heading into the forest area, and since then, no one had heard from him. A heavy silence blanketed the room. Two women, one a mother, the other a lover, sat across from each other, their eyes filled with the same desperate worry, both unsure of what to say or do next. "Have you thought about calling the police?" Diep asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not yet. I did think about it. But, you know the law, someone has to be missing for 24 hours before they'll file a report. And besides, James has always been so careful. He wouldn't just disappear without telling either of us." "Exactly. That's what makes this so strange. No matter how busy he was, he always left a message. He's never been out of touch this long." Diep's voice cracked. James's mother sat in silence for a moment, then gave a small nod. "Maybe. I'll call his assistant. Ask where he went yesterday, or if someone went with him." She reached for the landline phone and, with slightly shaking hands, dialed the number of one of James's employees. After a few rings, a young male voice answered. She tried to sound calm. "It's me. I'm calling to ask, do you know where James went yesterday? Has anything happened? He hasn't called since yesterday and I'm getting worried." There was a pause on the other end. Then the assistant spoke. "Yes, around late afternoon yesterday, Mr. James said he was going to check the western forest area, the one where some strangers had been seen lately. He said he'd be back soon. After that, we didn't see him return to the office. We assumed he went home directly." James's mother froze. She turned to look at Diep, her eyes now wide with real fear. "Went straight home," she repeated. "But he never came back here." Diep felt her heartbeat slam against her ribcage. Her lips trembled. "So, since yesterday afternoon, no one has seen James? Not at the office. Not at home. And he hasn't called anyone?" All the assistant could say was, I'm sorry. We really don't know what happened. Mr. James said he'd be gone for maybe an hour. That area isn't even that far." James's mother hung up. The room fell silent once more. The ticking of the wall clock now echoed louder than ever, each tick stretching the silence like a taut string of dread. They sat there, staring at one another. No words. No comfort. Just the creeping realization that their fears were no longer just fears. They were becoming a painful, undeniable reality. Meanwhile, on James's side, the night before, after the sudden blow from behind, everything before James's eyes faded, like a thick fog closing in. He had no time to react. His foot slipped on the rocky edge, and he tumbled down the steep slope, crashing against jagged rocks and dirt ledges. Pain seared through his skull, and then, nothing. Only darkness. Complete, silent darkness. James lay unconscious, alone in the middle of a cold, desolate forest. In that fragile space between life and death, he no longer knew where he was, or if he'd ever wake again. But fate hadn't abandoned him. That morning, an elderly woman who lived near the mountains, someone who regularly ventured into the forest to collect herbs, happened to pass by that very spot, just like any ordinary day. Except this time, she stopped. Her eyes fell on a figure lying motionless beneath a tree. His clothes were soaked in mud, his forehead dried with blood, and his face, though dirt-covered, was that of a young man, fading into the wilderness. Without hesitation, she called for help. A group of villagers came and carried James down to the small house at the foot of the mountain, where the old woman lived alone. That night, James remained unconscious. His breath was shallow but steady, his eyes shut tight. A large red bruise marked his temple from the fall. The old woman stayed by his side, changing cool cloths, spooning in thin porridge water, and praying silently that the young man would survive. Then, just as dawn broke, he moved. First, a small twitch of his brow. Then slowly, his heavy eyelids fluttered open, wincing against the daylight filtering through the old wooden roof. James was awake. But before he could understand what had happened, pain surged through his head. He reached for his temple and felt the rough gauze bandaged there. And then, like a wave, his memory returned. The forest. The chase. The blow. The fall. And the darkness. He sat up suddenly, dizzy. The old woman entered the room and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're awake. Thank heavens. You were unconscious all night. Your head was badly injured. I brought you here and had someone call the local medic." I don't have medicine at home, so I'll be taking you to the nearby clinic this morning." James thanked her, still dazed. Once he felt stronger, he asked to borrow a phone. But when he checked for his own belongings, the ones he always carried like lifelines, he was stunned to find his wallet missing, and his phone completely out of service from the deep forest. It wasn't until he was lying in a clinic bed later that morning, when signal finally returned, that everything hit him. The screen lit up. Dozens of missed calls from his mother. Over 30 missed calls from Diep. A flood of unread messages. It was clear. They were terrified. They had no idea what had happened to him. James's heart ached, not from injury, but from guilt. He had never let his mother and Diep worry like this before. For years, he'd always made a point to check in. Always left a message. He knew, one night of silence like this could feel like an eternity for Diep, filled with fear and endless tears. He immediately called his mother. His voice was weak but steady. "Mom. I'm okay. Yesterday, I lost my phone when I went into the forest. I didn't realize it until later. Please don't worry, I just hit my head a little. I'm at the clinic now, resting." His mother's voice trembled on the other end, relieved, emotional, and lightly scolding. "You scared me half to death." Diep was frantic. She was about to call the police. "Message her, quickly." James nodded, then sent a short but reassuring message to Diep. "I'm okay. Don't worry. I'm at a clinic near the forest. My wallet's gone, and my phone was damaged, I couldn't reach anyone. Can you come here? Bring a bit of cash for the bill. I'll be waiting." When Diep received the message from James, she froze. Just a few short lines, but to her, it was a ray of light after a long, endless night of darkness. "I'm okay. Don't worry. I'm at a clinic near the forest. Lost my wallet, phone broken, couldn't contact anyone. Can you come? Bring some cash for the hospital bill. I'll wait." Her heart stopped for a second. She read the message over and over again, tears falling silently onto the screen. A swirl of emotions rushed through her, relief that he was alive, but also a heart-wrenching worry knowing he'd been hurt and had spent the night in a clinic, alone. Without wasting another moment, Diep jumped to her feet. She quickly tidied up the house, asked a neighbor to look after her chickens and ducks, stuffed some cash, documents, and personal items into a small bag, and rushed out the door. This time, she didn't walk slowly like that morning. She nearly ran. Each step filled with urgency, fear, and desperation. Only one thought echoed in her mind: "James, please, wait for me. I'm coming." The clinic was located in a remote area, not far from where James had fallen. When Diep arrived, the sun was already high, casting rays through the leaves shading the old roof. The entrance was quiet, only the soft rustle of wind and faint sounds from inside breaking the stillness. She gave his name at the front desk. The nurse pointed to a simple room at the end of the hallway. The door was slightly ajar. Diep gently pushed it open. There, on a modest bed by the window, James lay asleep. His face was pale, his hair tousled, a fresh bandage still wrapped around his forehead. His collar still bore traces of dried soil. Diep stood still for a few moments. All the sleepless nights, all the crushing worry, all the silent prayers came flooding back. She bit her lip and quietly sat on the edge of the bed. She didn't wake him, just gazed at the man she loved, breathing softly like a child after a fever. "James, you don't know how terrified I was, thinking I might never see you again." She didn't say it aloud. She held it in her heart. After a while, James stirred. His eyes fluttered open, blurry at first, but then, they met hers. And his gaze lit up. "Diep," he whispered, voice hoarse but gentle. "You're awake? How do you feel?" She grabbed his hand, voice trembling but tender. James managed a faint smile, bringing a hand to his head. "I'm okay. Just hit my head pretty hard and passed out. The doctor said I can go home later today." "Don't worry." "How can I not worry? A whole night without hearing from you. I imagined every worst-case scenario. I'm so sorry." James gently squeezed her hand. "After I fell, my phone shattered and my wallet got lost. I couldn't call anyone. I couldn't do anything. Thank God someone found me." Diep nodded softly. Then she pulled out some cash and documents from her bag, handing them to him. "Here. For the hospital bill. Let me take care of everything else." James looked at her, deeply moved. In that moment, he realized, after all the pain, the chaos, the near death, just waking up and seeing Diep sitting beside his bed, was enough. After settling the discharge paperwork, James didn't want to go home. Instead, he turned to Diep and said, his voice quiet but resolute. "I don't want to worry Mom anymore. If she sees me like this, she'll break down. Can I stay at your place for a day or two? I just want some peace. I just want to be with you." Diep looked surprised, then nodded without hesitation. "Yes. Come home with me. I'll take care of you. This time, I won't let you be alone again." James smiled. It was a weak smile, but it was filled with peace. He leaned his head gently on her shoulder as they rode together in the small car, heading back to the home that had always welcomed them. The sky seemed bluer that afternoon. The wind calmer. Everything softer, like the world had quieted down after the storm. And Diep knew. No matter how many storms life may bring, as long as they could hold hands like this, they could weather them all. After returning to Diep's house, James's health gradually improved. The bruises began to fade, and the wound on his forehead was healing. Though he still winced slightly when bending down, he was walking, talking, and even smiling more. Diep's little home, nestled under the shade of tall trees, brought James a strange yet soothing sense of peace. Here, there was no city noise. No stressful meetings. No avalanche of work emails. Just the morning chirping of birds, the faint scent of flowers and grass, and the quiet tenderness of a woman who loved him with her whole heart. Each morning, Diep would rise early, cook porridge, and place it on the table alongside a warm glass of water. She never fussed or hovered, never rushed him to rest. She simply stayed close, close enough that he never felt alone. James had only left the clinic a few days earlier. Yet his heart already felt warmer than it had in years. One sunny morning, golden rays streamed through the leaves and spilled across the front yard. James glanced toward Diep's small garden, where wildflowers peeked between rows of vegetables and patches of weeds, and smiled. He turned to her. "How about we tidy up the garden today? My hands are itching for something to do." Diep blinked in surprise, then chuckled. "All right. But only if you promise to take it easy. No overdoing it." And just like that, a sunlit morning became one of the most beautiful memories they would ever share, after everything they had been through. James rolled up the sleeves of his light shirt and helped Diep pull weeds, move pots, and replant flower beds. Meanwhile, Diep gently watered the plants, wiped dust from potted greens, and trimmed wilted leaves from the small backyard corner she cherished. Laughter echoed in the still morning air. At one point, James splashed water on Diep's shirt by accident. She pretended to pout, then burst into laughter with him, like children at play. Another moment, he stretched to reach a hanging pot, and she hurried to support him from behind. And in that brief second, he turned, looked into her eyes, and held her gaze for a while. No words were needed. No grand gestures. They both knew they were sharing a simple, perfect morning. Peaceful. Ordinary. But deeply, undeniably precious. After tending the garden, they sat together under the porch roof. A cool breeze swept through. 2 glasses of chilled lemonade sat on the bamboo table. James leaned his head gently against Diep's shoulder and whispered, "Thank you, for not letting go. For coming to me, even when I thought I had nothing left." Diep didn't say a word. She simply smiled and squeezed his hand a little tighter. Because for her, no thanks were necessary. As long as the man she loved was safe, that was more than enough. That evening, the sky was clear. Moonlight filtered through the canopy of leaves, casting a soft glow over the small garden, where 2 souls, after days of separation, worry, and heartache, had finally found their way back to each other. Diep's little house was bathed in the warm yellow glow of light. The smell of freshly cooked rice drifted out from the kitchen, making everything feel familiar again, comforting in a way James hadn't felt in so long. Though not yet fully recovered, James insisted on helping Diep set the table for dinner. He couldn't do much, but he stayed close, passing her the chopsticks, lifting the pot lid, or simply standing behind her, asking the tiniest questions just to hear her voice again. "Did you add fish sauce? It smells amazing." "Who just stands around sniffing dinner while someone's cooking?" Diep laughed, shaking her head. James clutched his head dramatically and pouted. "I'm an injured man, and I'm being scolded? So cruel." She could only laugh. He was absolutely milking it. After dinner, they sat together on the front porch. The night breeze was cool, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass, damp earth from an old rain, and the occasional chirp of crickets hidden beneath the bushes. James leaned against Diep, their fingers gently intertwined, as if afraid that letting go might wake them from this dream. "If every day could be like this, I wouldn't need anything else," he murmured. Diep turned to look at him, her eyes soft and silent. She didn't need to respond, because in that moment, they both understood, it wasn't promises or possessions that mattered most. It was this. Now. This quiet, fleeting now. Later, back in the bedroom, James sat on the bed watching Diep lay out a blanket on the other side of the room. Then he grinned mischievously. "Hey, Diep. What now? My head's been hurting all day. I'm afraid if I sleep alone, I might get dizzy again. How about we share the bed tonight?" Diep turned around, eyes wide. "Excuse me?" James clutched his head again, feigning agony. "It's true. The doctor said I need warmth and no stress. And sleeping alone is very sad. I'm still injured, you know." She saw right through him. But looking at that face, the face of a man who had just crossed the edge of life and death, now simply wanting to be close to the one he loved, she couldn't say no. Her cheeks flushed, but her voice softened. "Just this once." James said nothing. He just beamed like a child receiving the best gift. They lay down beside each other. No more words were spoken. Only quiet breaths, the calm rhythm of 2 hearts, and the gentle warmth of each other's presence. James wrapped an arm around Diep from behind, his head resting softly against her shoulder, and let out a long sigh, like he was finally letting go of everything he'd been carrying. "Thank you, for always being here," he whispered. "Sleep now," Diep murmured, lacing her fingers with his. tomorrow is a brand new day. That night, the little room fell into perfect stillness. No more terrifying darkness. No more unanswered calls or aching silences. Just the two of them, side by side. And in each other's arms, they found peace. And that night ended with a long, quiet exhale. In each other's arms, James and Diep found a rare moment of peace after days of turmoil. No more desperate ringing phones. No more heavy shadows of fear. Just the steady rhythm of two hearts, the warmth of shared breath, and a humble home sheltering two souls who had just found their way back to one another. But, would that peace last? Was this just the stillness before a new storm? James couldn't forget the savage eyes of the man who struck him from behind that night in the forest. If it had simply been a robbery, why was he the target? How did they know he would be there, alone, without security? And why were only his phone and wallet taken, while items of greater value were left untouched? Could it be that this wasn't a random attack at all, but a calculated act? A warning? Or worse, a cover-up for something far darker happening within his very own company? The more he thought, the more James felt something was terribly wrong. As someone who had built his company from the ground up, he knew one truth all too well. In business, the greatest danger rarely comes from the outside. It comes from the places you thought were safe. And this time, James could not look away. He made a decision. Once his body had healed, he would quietly investigate everything. He would find out who was near the forest that day. He would examine the warehouse records. And most importantly, he would revisit the numbers he once trusted without question. Would James uncover the truth hidden behind the mysterious attack? Would Diep stand by him in this new battle, as both the company and his very life might be at stake? And was the person behind it all truly a stranger? Or someone James never would have suspected? Everything remains unanswered. Stay with us in the next episode, where secrets begin to unravel, and dangers thought to have passed begin to rise again. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss the next chapter of this story. A story of love, conspiracy, and the courage to walk through the shadows, together.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình tiếp tục đưa đến mọi người câu chuyện tình yêu của James và LyTuDiep nha mọi người. Như mọi người cũng có thể thấy là ở trong tập này thì James và Diệp đã cùng nhau trải qua khó khăn và một lần nữa họ lại có thể trở về bên nhau thật hạnh phúc. Tình yêu của họ thì cũng dành cho nhau rất là nhiều đó mọi người. Lúc khó khăn thì họ luôn chấp nhận ở bên nhau, và trong tập tiếp theo thì sẽ có những giải đáp kỹ hơn về cái vấn đề là công ty Diệp đang xảy ra một tên nội gián mà hắn chính là tên trộm đó mọi người, mà cũng là người mà đã tiếp tay cho bọn trộm để hãm hại James. Vậy thì diễn biến câu chuyện nó sẽ tiếp biến ra sao và liệu James có thể giải quyết được cái mâu thuẫn nội bộ này không, và tình yêu của anh và Diệp sẽ diễn biến như thế nào thì mời mọi người đón xem tập tiếp theo ở ngày mai nhé mọi người, và hãy đăng ký kênh, bật chuông thông báo lên để đón xem video tiếp theo nhé.